Howdy folks, I'm Ben Starr, the Ultimate Food Geek. Welcome back to my messy kitchen. Today we are rethinking roasted garlic. Mostly because I just published a video on roasted garlic sourdough bread and everyone is wondering how I got those big, beautiful, perfect whole cloves of roasted garlic out of the bulb after I roasted it. Well, I didn't actually do it that way. You guys know me, I'm the Ultimate Food Geek. I am always looking for not only a way to make things easier, but for techniques that actually result in a better finished product than the traditional way of doing things. And it turns out that the traditional way of roasting garlic is actually wrong. Historically, we wrap garlic up in something, a parchment pouch, foil, we drizzle a little olive oil, some salt in there, and then we put it in the oven at a pretty high temperature, 350 degrees or more, and we cook it for about an hour. In the last several decades, our scientific understanding of what happens inside the garlic cell as it cooks has dramatically improved, yet the home kitchen cooking technique has not evolved with that science. So today I am going to introduce you to a much better and easier way of creating roasted garlic that's going to result in something 50 times better than the best roasted garlic that you've ever tasted. So today we're going to start with a demonstration, but of course you must promise me that you will stick around for the science, because not only is the science utterly fascinating, but if you don't follow this recipe properly, you could end up killing yourself and your family. It's that important. So we're starting today with whole peeled garlic cloves. Now you of course can start the good old-fashioned way, but as you know I have tested both this, and the final result is indistinguishable whether you start the hard way or the easy way. Now, if I'm going to be using garlic raw or if I'm putting it into a saute pan, I always start with this because the whole garlic bulb does have a noticeably richer, fresher, and more pungent flavor than the stuff that's been peeled and has been sitting on the grocery store shelf for a couple of weeks. But if there's no difference in the final product by the time we're done, I am not going to fault you for going this route because this is the route I always take when I start this particular recipe. So you're going to take yourself 1 to 3 cups of peeled garlic cloves and you want to put them in an oven-safe pot with an oven-safe lid. Then we are going to take olive oil, which is my oil of choice for this method. You can actually use any kind of oil, it really doesn't matter, but olive oil is the cheapest, super healthy oil for you. And the oil that results after this recipe is completed is a really incredible flavoring agent and cooking agent to add flavor to your other dishes. So start with an oil that you like. It does not have to be a top shelf quality olive oil. This is just a bulk olive oil that I get at Costco. You are going to pour enough oil into your container to fully cover your garlic cloves. Now we'll give this a good shake to get all of that garlic kind of settled in properly, and we're going to season with a fairly generous amount of salt and pepper. Now, on goes the oven-safe lid, and this pot goes into your oven at 200 degrees Fahrenheit for 6 hours. Now, because this is a 6-hour-long process, I like to program my oven to bake for 6 hours and then turn itself off so I can do it while I'm asleep and it's done the next morning. If you've never programmed your oven, I actually use this feature all the time. It is super helpful in a lot of circumstances. So I'm going to show you how I program mine. First thing I'm going to do is turn the oven on to the temperature that I want, which is 200 degrees in this case. It's actually already at 200 degrees because I was baking something in it earlier. So now I'm going to press cook time. And then I'm going to tell it the number of hours and minutes that I want it to cook at, which is 6 hours and 0 minutes. And then it tells me press start. So I'm going to press start. Now my oven is going to bake for 6 hours and turn itself off, which is super convenient. Now, I am the Ultimate Food Geek, so I am about to explain to you why 6 hours at 200 degrees Fahrenheit results in a much more delicious roasted garlic than 1 hour at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And don't you dare skip ahead to the end of this video. Every time you skip ahead of the science, you become fractionally stupider, and I become much, much more disappointed in your worth as a human being. Buckle up, folks. Learn a little bit of science and it will improve your cooking and improve your life. It will also make you way more impressive to your friends and family. Have you noticed that when you bite into a raw clove of garlic, it's really intense, makes your eyes water and your breath smell bad. But when you bite into a clove of roasted garlic, it is sweet and complex and nuanced and muted. How does that happen? How does it go from acrid and intense which some of us really love, to sweet and delicate and nuanced? Well, it all has to do with enzymes. And enzymes are naturally occurring chemicals that serve as a catalyst or a trigger for chemical reactions. And there are two pairs of enzymes and reactants within this clove of garlic that allows it to be magically transformed into something that is just radically different from how it started. And you guessed it, my terrible illustrations are coming into play to help us understand how this happens. All right, I want you to imagine that this is a garlic cell. Now there's a ton of stuff in this cell other than what I've drawn here, but I'm trying to make it easy for you guys to understand. So within this cell, we have a compound called allein. And I want you to think of allein as a sort of hand grenade. In and of itself, allein isn't particularly revolting, but it's what happens to allein that causes that really intense acrid flavor of fresh garlic that's been smushed or cut or crushed. Also within this garlic clove is an enzyme that is partnered with allein. It is called alliinase, as depicted by these cute tiny little scissors. Alliinase's only purpose in life is to snip allein, but within the garlic cell, they're held separately. So the allein does not get snipped until the alliinase comes in contact with it. When that happens, when garlic is either sliced or crushed or bruised or otherwise the cell wall is damaged, the alliinase goes and snips the allein in half. And what comes out is this awful, acrid, intense, pungent compound called allicin. And allicin is what you associate with being raw, fresh garlic. Some of us dearly love that, but some of us cannot stand it. And it is, in fact, garlic's defense response to being dug up by a critter that might want to eat it. Garlic has two ways of replicating itself. It can replant itself by seed that forms on the flower, or it can regrow from the individual cloves in the bulb of garlic below ground. If the seed gets eaten by a critter, it passes through the critter's digestive system, gets pooped out into the soil, has some natural fertilizer, and grows into a new garlic plant. But if that clove of garlic gets eaten, it is so soft that it gets digested in that critter's stomach. So the bulb of garlic and those individual cloves do not want to be eaten by a critter. So as the critter, whatever it is digging through the ground, if its claw happens to tear open a clove of garlic, the allicin is created, which is the defense mechanism. The creature gets it in his eyes, the eyes start to water, it's pungent, it's crazy, I could never kiss somebody on a date if my breath tasted like this, and it runs away. So when we are talking about transforming garlic into something really delicious, we want to minimize the amount of allicin that's created because allicin is pungent and, for some people, downright repugnant. This is why it's preferable to cook the garlic cloves whole rather than sliced or smushed or chopped, because the alliinase does not get a chance to snip the allein in half to produce allicin. I'm sorry if your name is Allison. So, first goal, minimize production of allicin, and we do that through the destruction of alliinase, the enzyme that creates it. And we do that with heat. But heat can also be an enemy. And that's where we need to understand our second pair of compound plus enzyme. Here is our garlic cell again, and we got tons of stuff in here. But one of the most common things within that cell is a starch called polysaccharide. As with most starches, they are actually made of smaller component sugars, but they're bound together in a complex, tight molecule, so they do not taste sweet to our palate. Actually, garlic does have a lot of sugar in it, but the allicin overpowers our palate when we eat a raw clove of garlic and we cannot taste its natural sugars. But through proper cooking technique, we can take these polysaccharides and break them down into their component sugars, which are actually made up of fructose, the same sugar that makes fruit sweet, and turn garlic into something that is almost as sweet as dessert. There is a natural enzyme called amylase that exists in that cell, and it is partnered with polysaccharide. And of course, as you guessed, it knows exactly where to snip polysaccharide until polysaccharide breaks down into its components. With allein, that was a really unpleasant component, allicin. But with polysaccharides, we break them down into their base components, which are basically fructose sugars. These components are sweet and pleasant, as opposed to their pre-broken down structure, polysaccharides, which are not really that noticeably sweet. So, whereas we don't want the enzyme alliinase anywhere near alliin because it produces something nasty, we definitely want amylase all over the polysaccharides because that transforms our garlic into something delicious and sweet. Now, heat is the death of all enzymes, but each enzyme denatures or dies at a different heat level. Alliinase starts to die at 107 degrees Fahrenheit and then goes completely dormant at 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Whereas amylase, which we do want, doesn't really begin to denature until 165 degrees Fahrenheit. So, if we can get our garlic cloves between 140 degrees Fahrenheit and 165 degrees Fahrenheit, we're going to destroy that alliinase, which is not our friend, and we are going to give our amylase, which is our friend, all of the time and temperature that it needs to begin breaking down those starches in the garlic clove and turning them into simple sugars that are sweet and delicious to our palate. And it turns out that 200 degrees Fahrenheit in the oven is really that sweet spot. Now, just because the oven's environment is 200 degrees Fahrenheit does not mean that the garlic and oil inside that pot is 200 degrees Fahrenheit. The oven is actually not a very efficient way of cooking something. Ovens use radiation to transmit heat, and if you have a convection oven, to a lesser extent, convection. But we're not using convection for this. Radiation is a relatively inefficient way to transmit heat into the pot. So if you had a way to keep a thermometer inside that oil and garlic in the 200-degree oven, you would find that it's going to rest at about 150 degrees Fahrenheit. And that is that sweet spot that allows our amylase to transform the starches in the garlic clove into delicious, complex, sweet flavor compounds, while completely destroying the alliinase that would otherwise produce really pungent, irritating flavors. And when we give that amylase 6 hours in the oven to do its job, it is really going to transform the majority of starch in that garlic clove into really delicious, complex, sweet flavor components, transforming that garlic into something that's truly magnificent. Pretty soon after the garlic has come out of the oven, you want to get it strained off and put into the fridge. And we'll talk about why that's important in just a second. But you can see we've got this absolutely gorgeous garlic-infused olive oil. I am going to pour it through a strainer and a funnel into a separate container that I keep labeled garlic oil. And this stuff is as good as gold, folks, especially for seasoning dishes or cooking vegetables or meats. So you just want to pour that oil off through a strainer in case any of those cloves fall out. And then you've got your beautiful roasted garlic cloves here, ready to be turned into something exquisite. Look at this beautiful, creamy, rich caramel color. And I'm telling you, when you taste one of these, you are never going to go back to traditional roasted garlic. If we had roasted this garlic in the oven the traditional way, at 350 degrees or higher for a shorter amount of time, we would have very quickly reached that 165 degree Fahrenheit mark, at which our friendly enzyme, amylase, that converts the starches into simple, delicious, rich, sweet sugars, would have been deactivated, and it wouldn't have had hardly any time to do its job. That's why it's important to lower the cooking temperature and extend the baking time so that we hold it for as long as possible within that range where it can do its job. But we need to talk about the elephant in the room, which is botulism. Now here's where you better not skip ahead, because if you do skip ahead, you might actually die. Botulism is a very rare but very serious foodborne illness that is caused by an incredibly common soil bacteria called Clostridium botulinum. This bacteria, in and of itself, is completely harmless if you happen to consume it, and it's actually killed at relatively low baking temperatures, starting at around 150 degrees Fahrenheit. So we kill the bacteria during the cooking process. However, that bacteria has a nasty habit of sporulating, which basically means it lays little eggs of baby bacteria that sit and wait for the ideal time to hatch into new bacteria. And as that happens, they produce a toxin that can be absolutely deadly if you ingest the toxin. Now, the good news is that botulinum bacteria do not sporulate unless they find themselves in a very narrow and specific type of environment. And that environment must be anaerobic, or completely lacking in oxygen. Well, what happens when we pour oil on top of garlic cloves? We are creating an anaerobic environment devoid of oxygen, and then we are putting it in the oven, and as it heats up, it goes through that danger zone. And if we happen to have copies of this botulinum bacteria on our garlic cloves, we have just given them the opportunity to sporulate. So while this technique is extremely popular with foodies and gourmet chefs, you will find a lot of argument on the internet amongst food geeks like me debating whether or not this procedure is safe. Now let's come back to earth for just a couple of seconds and realize that there are typically fewer than 25 cases of foodborne botulism in the United States reported every year. This is an extremely, extremely rare condition. Your chances of becoming a billionaire in the lottery are actually higher than you killing yourself with botulism. However, this method does put garlic, which is a known, specified vector for botulism, into the exact environment in which it might produce botulinin toxin. And I know a lot of you out there are big fans of Botox, but you don't want to put botulinin toxin into your digestive system because it can, in fact, murder you. So if you're somebody that's absolutely paranoid, stick to the old-fashioned method of roasting garlic. If you're somebody that sort of treads that line between paranoid and confident, understand that if botulinin toxin was created during the early process of cooking, the toxin itself, which is the only problem, the spores and the bacteria are not a problem if they go into our digestive tracts. The problem is the toxin that is produced by them. And that toxin is completely destroyed at 176 degrees Fahrenheit over a period of 30 minutes. Well, we baked our garlic at 200 degrees Fahrenheit for 6 hours. So you can bet, if your oven's thermostat is correct, that we have destroyed any potential botulinum toxin that might have been created early on in the cooking process as everything warmed up. I've kept a thermometer in my pot to monitor the cooking temperature and found that it tends to hover around 180 to 185 degrees during the last few hours of the cooking process. So for those of you who are absolutely paranoid about food safety, you can take this garlic, put it on the stovetop after it comes out of the oven, and just make sure it's held above 176 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 minutes, and you are completely safe. Regardless, for food safety reasons, both these guys and the oil that they were cooked in need to go straight into the fridge after they come out of the oven. Unless, of course, you're going to be using them immediately. The oil, of course, should only be used in situations where it's going to see some heat, so cooking applications. We know that we completely get rid of any botulinum toxin at 250 degrees Fahrenheit instantly. And you're certainly going to have that temperature if you're sauteing something. But if you want to make your oil safe for room temperature applications, like salad dressings or drizzling right on some sourdough bread before you want to eat it, all you got to do is pasteurize it. Put it in a pot, bring it to 250 degrees Fahrenheit, cool it back down. Then you've made it completely safe even for room temperature storage. It can sit out on your countertop and you can use it pretty much any way you want. These gorgeous golden roasted garlic cloves should be kept in the refrigerator. Pull them about an hour or two before you intend to serve so that they can soften and become unctuous and delicious again. And try to use them within a week of baking. Now, I know some of you folks out there and all of this botulism talk has got you completely freaked out. I'm gonna be honest, I just stick my garlic cloves in the oven for 6 hours and the safety that's built into that process is perfectly fine for me. And I have fed this garlic to thousands of people. But if maximizing food safety is very important for you, I completely understand. Just maximize the video description right underneath this video. Click where it says more. You can also link over to the corresponding article on my website, ultimatefoodgeek.com, and I will outline each of the simple steps that you can take to maximize the food safety for this particular process. As for me, I haven't done this thing in a really, really long time, except just doing it as demonstration for this video. For 7 years at my restaurant, we did it this way, and our customers thanked us for it. And trust me, folks, once you give this a taste, you're never going to want to eat garlic another way ever again. If you have learned something valuable for this video, I really encourage you to subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. You have no idea how much that helps me out. Please also drop me a comment in the comment section below, especially if you've got questions or if you're having trouble with this technique. I try to respond to all comments from folks that are having trouble. Hit me up on my website, ultimatefoodgeek.com, for tons of free printable recipes. My name is Ben Starr. I am the Ultimate Food Geek. Thanks for watching.